All aboard! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, basketball fans of all ages, I am Beast Mikey. You have now arrived on my train of thought. It is draft lottery day. And as we've seen over the last few years, we've gotten game changers like Victor Wembanyama, Cade Cunningham, Paolo Banchero, Anthony Edwards, and Anthony Davis. All these guys are obviously number one overall picks and have proven to be very good to elite players. In the case of Anthony Davis, he's a Hall of Famer if he retired tomorrow type of player. Now, all these guys except for Wemby have made the playoffs, obviously, and Davis is the only champion amongst these five, though Anthony Edwards this year is still pending. And the prize this year is Cooper Flagg. As we have seen over the last year of college basketball, Flagg has been the best player. He won Player of the Year, and he was very productive and is being compared favorably, for the most part, to guys like Andre Kirilenko and Scottie Pippen, and the current comp being Jason Tatum for his two-way versatility. He's a very good shooter. He can defend. He can create plays off the dribble. He's an overall very good player. Could he be a Scottie Pippen clone in a sense of he's excellent as a 2, but good as a 1? Time will tell, obviously, on such a thing. But there are 14 teams that didn't make the playoffs, as we know. 12 of these teams have a shot. It may be minute in some cases, but a shot at getting Cooper Flagg or either of the Rutgers boys, but I'll get to them later. Let's talk about the 14 teams that didn't make the playoffs. Utah will be leading the charge. They had 14% chance of getting the first overall pick. Finally tanked right. It feels like the Jazz wanted to tank since the Wemby draft after trading away Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert in the 2022 offseason. Sadly for them, Lauri Markkanen turned into an all-star caliber forward, and Walker Kessler was a really, really good rookie. Only Banchero was better in terms of that Rookie of the Year voting. And they could not take for Wemby because they started too well. They eventually got the message, but it was too little, too late for the first overall pick. And Utah really has been kind of put in a horrible spot for the last couple of years, at least until the 24 season started, where they were not good enough to make the playoffs, but not bad enough to be a top 5 draft pick situation. Until this year, where they finally just flat out bottomed out. And part of that's probably because Kessler and Markkanen both missed a bunch of games. Markkanen only played 47, Kessler 58. And Colin Sexton missed a bunch of games as well. So with that, the Jazz were just awful and just took beatings the entire way through this season. Can they finally get the cornerstone that Danny Ainge has tried to seek for many years now? Washington's also at 14%. Ovechkin, Daniels, Wood. One is a Hall of Famer if he does nothing else on the ice, and Ovechkin's obviously still going. One's a rising star after the greatest rookie quarterback season of all time, and the other is amongst the league leaders in home runs. This is James Wood I'm referring to, obviously. And what they all have in common, they're DC cornerstones and DC stars on their respective teams. But the Wizards don't have one of those. Yes, they did draft Alex Sarr last year, and towards the second half of the year, he looked better, but he feels like he's going to be a supporting role type of player. Time will tell if that remains, but he feels like he's going to be a supporting role type of dude. Can the Wizards finally get their star? They're going to need one horribly. They're also going to need to score because they don't generally do that. They had the fourth worst offense in the league last year as a team, and only Utah had a worse defense in points per game. Cooper Flagg would obviously help out both parties, and that would be interesting if the Wizards were to improve on their draft lottery stock from last year where they picked second. The other team with 14% chance to win the draft lottery tonight is Charlotte. Good trio, but it feels like LaMelo Ball, who played 47 games, Brandon Miller, who only played 27, and Miles Bridges, who led this trio in terms of games played, which was 64, just can't stay healthy. It also explains why the Hornets can't score. They also had the worst offense in the league, or tied for the worst offense in the league. I'll explain who they tied with later. And at times, it showed despite Ball being a borderline all-star player. Could keeping Marcus Williams after the non-trade to the Lakers, he failed a physical, could that be a blessing in disguise for Charlotte? Because Williams is a pretty solid defensive player in the middle of the paint for the Hornets. Getting Flagg would obviously regulate that lineup because Flagg could play the 3 or the 4. He probably plays the 4 and let Miller go down to the wing and play the 3. It really regulates that lineup quite nicely if they were to get him. New Orleans has a 12.5% chance. More lottery luck? In 2012, the Pelicans went from, well, they were the Hornets at that time, and then they became the Pelicans. They went from the 4th pick to the 1st and got Anthony Davis. Cornerstone player. He was that for the 7 years he was there. They didn't really do anything, but that's more of a team issue than a he issue. Right before they traded Davis to the Lakers, they won the draft lottery in 2019, and with the 7th best odds. And then they drafted Zion Williamson, who was another can't-miss type of project. Now, Zion's been proven to be really good when he's on the court. Here's the problem. He's not on the court when he needs to be. And the most he's played has been 71 games a couple of years ago. He's only played 60 games in his career in a season twice. That's the alarming part. Part of that's conditioning, and part of that's he's just got too much weight for his frame. And if he could get himself in a better condition, Zion Williamson could be the dominant player that he's been built to be, because in the dunker spot for Zion, he is absolutely insane. Can the Pelicans somehow get lucky again with another can't-miss first overall pick from a blue blood school? It's possible, because New Orleans has already done it twice. Philadelphia could get worse. The reason why I say this is simple. The Sixers have a 10.5% chance of winning the lottery. They could also lose the pick entirely. If they fall to 7, that pick will go to Oklahoma City. And you can hear the screams from Oklahoma City in the event that that happens, because now you're telling me the Thunder, who were the best team in the league this year, have a top 7 pick in this year's draft. Great. But it's true. This season for the Sixers couldn't be any worse than it actually was. They had 3 $200 million deals on their roster, and all of them were bad, and all of them looked bad, at least for this year. Tyrese Maxey looked the best of them, but Maxey regressed and had some injury issues throughout the season. Joel Embiid was never right after going all in on the Olympics, and his knee never really cooperated with him for the season. Then they waited a month to actually get the surgery. When he should have got it in March, they got it in April. We'll find out what's going to go on in a couple of weeks after the 6-week period is up with the updates. And then there's Paul George. Oof. That looks gross. And we're only a year into that deal for Paul George. At least there's only 3 years left on it, but it looked gross. Can these three get healthy, especially Embiid and George, and the Sixers get back into playoff contention? Maybe. They're going to need to have some good lottery luck tonight. Otherwise, this could get really, really bad. Brooklyn has a 9% chance of winning the lottery. Surprisingly good defense. Believe it or not, the Nets were 10th best, tied for it anyway, in terms of points allowed defensively. They were slightly above the Cavaliers in this realm. So how did they miss the playoffs? Easy. If you can't score, you can't win. They tied Charlotte for the least productive offense in the game in terms of points per game, and that should explain things quite nicely. So Brooklyn's got a lot of draft capital this year. They have 4 first-round picks, and obviously this one's going to be the signature pick. What do the Nets do here? Do they go all in for a star like they've done twice already in their franchise history since they moved to Brooklyn? Or do they try to rebuild and flush out some depth and hopefully get a couple of guys who can put the ball in the hoop? Because that would generally be nice. I like some of the guys on the Nets roster. Nick Claxton's a good player, for example. But the Nets need people who could actually score and do something when it came to the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, they're fine, because you can do a lot of damage if you're the 10th best defense in terms of points per game. Just get buckets. Toronto, so they have a 7.5% chance. Brandon, Barnes, Barrett. I would consider all 3 of these guys really good number 2 guys on a contending team. Barnes has the potential and the ability to get to being a number 1 guy on the team. He is their best player, yes, and he's still young enough where he could absolutely grow. What's good about the Raptors situation is that, yes, they're all being paid a good amount of money. Sure, they've all gotten their second contracts, and in Ingram's case, third, but they are in place for the next couple of years. And Emmanuel Quickley, who has shown himself to be a pretty solid guard, is a pretty good player here. So they're in place for the next at least 2 years before Barrett's deal runs out. They're not in a bad spot here. They just need Barnes to take the leap. Can he make that jump? That is the question. Similar to how Cade Cunningham made the jump this season, for example. Can Barnes make a similar leap next year? That's where Toronto currently is. Now, San Antonio's next, and they have two different shots at this. Their own pick has a 6% chance. The Atlanta pick has a 0.7% chance. That's the last pick here. I will talk about the Hawks. But for San Antonio, it's pretty simple. Critical offseason. The Spurs have had spectacular luck over the last 2 years. They won the Wemby draft, obviously, and then they got their second straight Rookie of the Year as Stephen Castle fell to the fourth pick, and they were able to snatch him up there. But not trading the latter player in the De'Aaron Fox deal has built a potentially dominant trio if they stay together, if they stay healthy. San Antonio looked like the playoff team until the Wemby blood clot issue happened, and then Fox went down about 3 weeks later with the finger issue. So that's where Mitch Johnson really didn't get a fair shake with those guys. He's going to get one now that El Jefe is going to be in the front office, not on the sidelines. So what do you do if you're San Antonio? Do you, A, play this night as it lies and then draft whoever falls to you or whoever you may get with your picks? Or B, do you try to go all in and say, we're going to kick down the contending door and announce the arrival with pairing another big-time star with Wemby and Fox, and maybe you have to give up Castle, but what do you do if you're San Antonio? Tonight's going to be a very critical night for San Antonio, who's got plenty of money to spend. Now, yes, they're going to have to pay Fox next year if they're going to keep him, which they probably will. But tonight's a very critical night where San Antonio can instantly announce their arrival as a contender. And if for the third straight year they get some more lottery luck, I think the league is absolutely doomed. Houston has a 3.8% chance. I'll explain why Houston's here. Awesome and awful. This pick is actually Phoenix's pick, but due to the KD trade, it went to Brooklyn. And then it got rerouted to Houston this past offseason as the Rockets have the right to swap with the Suns to get up to this spot here. The Rockets are in a similar spot as San Antonio in the sense that they got plenty of picks, a lot of young talent, some experience, but a lot of young talent that they can truly build. The difference is the Rockets have an established coach in Ime Udoka who obviously knows what he's doing and knows how to handle business. Then there's the Kevin Durant wrinkle in all of this, as word has gotten out earlier today that Durant has some interest in the Rockets. He sees what we all see. Houston's got really good young players, a lot of picks, and a situation where KD can be the best player, but at the same time, the Rockets can break through. They need a closer, again, in the worst way. Jalen Green is a very talented player and can absolutely make a couple of leaps. The problem is, he did not make them against Golden State, and that was an issue. Houston really showed their age in some of the losses in that series. And if Durant were to go to Houston, sure, the Rockets give up a couple of the young assets. They would try to keep Amen Thompson, but they're going to give up a couple of the younger assets to Phoenix and some of the picks. Speaking of the Suns, Phoenix has got to sell and sell fast because it's an ugly situation. They don't have control of their picks for the next half decade. They have a lot of their cap tied up into three different players. Obviously Durant, Booker, who's very good, and Bradley Beal, who has not been the same since he got to Phoenix. And it's kind of held the roster hostage because of the no-trade clause, because he could have been a player for the Miami Heat without it. And the Suns are in a messy, messy spot with all of this and no real resources to try to make this roster better. Phoenix is probably in the worst spot in the NBA at this moment in time because of all this. And if they can get a lifeline with this Rockets trade with KD, if it actually happens, or whatever trade with KD, or whatever trade with Booker, if I'm Phoenix, I take it. And I try to just blow it up and rebuild for the future. Portland's got a 3.7% chance to win this lottery tonight. Decent core, but I think they're in a lesser spot than Toronto is. Like, if Portland played Toronto in a best of seven right now, I think Toronto's better. I think they're in a similar spot. There's no true star here. when it comes to the Blazers. Scoot Henderson's a good player, and he was supposed to be that, but he hasn't really taken that jump. Shaedon Sharpe and Anthony Simons are nice players, nice wing players, but again, they feel like number 2 guys. DeAndre Ayton, he believes he's a 1. He's got some talent, sure. He was a first overall pick for a reason, but he hasn't taken that leap either, at least not consistently enough, and his health doesn't allow him to. He only played 40 games last year, and he's just been underwhelming for a lot of his career, to be honest. And they could level up, sure. All of them are young enough to. But can they? That's something I need to see from the Blazers to really take another leap. Dallas has a 1.8% chance. Clock is ticking. The Luka trade, as we know, shook several universes. But it also set a timer on the Mavericks' true window of contention with Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. And now that clock's going to be accelerated for a year because Kyrie tore his ACL, and it was so late in the season, he may miss the entirety of next one. Not great. Anthony Davis, as we know, is allegedly made of glass and can get hurt at any given moment. He may be hurt right now. I hope not. But in any event, it wouldn't be shocking if Davis gets hurt at some point this year. I like Derek Lively. I like some of the other players on this team. But their real contention is a healthy Irving and a healthy AD. Can Dallas get another piece to help the matters and help the cause when Kyrie has to sit out for a lot of this year? Speaking of which, Irving's a free agent too. They might have to pay Irving whatever he wants because of the trade with Luka. Because you can't afford to lose 2 crazy big-time stars at this given moment in time. Nico Harrison, you are on the clock. That may not be a good thing. Chicago, the yearly tradition. They have a 1.7% chance of winning the lottery tonight. The Bulls have become the true definition of mid. Every year, they end up in the play-in tournament, and more often than not, they're out of the play-in tournament before they can get into the playoffs. They're usually in the 7 through 10 range, and somebody like Atlanta or Miami or Cleveland one year would basically show them the door. It's not great. At least in this case, for the Bulls, they are kind of sort of blowing it up, and they moved on from Zach LaVine. They moved on from DeMar DeRozan. I'll get to who they moved on to them to in a moment. And at least in the Bulls' case, they wouldn't even have had a first-round pick had they not made this deal, the 3-team deal with the Spurs and the next team I'm going to talk about, in the Kings. They have a 0.8% chance. West Coast Bulls. Speaking of LaVine and DeRozan, both they looked good in Sacramento to kind of fill the hole of De'Aaron Fox. But when they were needed the most, Dallas actually buried them, which is kind of wild, but true. The Kings at least have an offseason where they're going to have Sabonis, LaVine, DeRozan, and Keegan Murray, who I thought was going to take a step forward, but he never really did, which is kind of disappointing. They were the Pacers before the Pacers, to be honest. And the difference is Indiana's been able to sustain it, while Sacramento truly hasn't been. We'll see what they are able to do. In the event that this pick drops to 13th or 14th, it will go to Atlanta, who currently does not have a shot at the first overall pick. Bill is due. This is the Dejounte Murray tax. It starts now. San Antonio will get 3 straight first-round picks from Atlanta. All these picks are unprotected. The 2026 pick will be a pick swap. San Antonio still has control of these picks. They gave up the 27 first, their first, to get De'Aaron Fox, but they have Atlanta's picks all completely in control. At least this year's Hawks pick shouldn't be the first overall like it was last year, where Atlanta had the 10th best odds, and they ended up getting Zachary Richessier anyway. Now, Richessier's not one of the transcendent talents or big-time players that I mentioned at the top of this video. He's more along the second or third tier of number 1 overall picks over the last few years. At least he looks like he could be a good pick and have some real promise and potential, especially after Atlanta freed up a spot with the DeAndre Hunter trade to Cleveland. And Atlanta at least got some draft capital, but that's later on in the first round. Anyway, back to that first overall pick. Atlanta probably shouldn't give San Antonio this year. It's been done. Orlando most famously did it when they got the Chris Webber draft right. And somehow they had the least amount of odds, won that draft lottery, and then got Chris Webber. And then they ended up flipping him for Penny Hardaway and 3 first-round picks, which turned into a really good trade for the Magic. Not that Webber wasn't a better player, Webber was, but the fact that Penny Hardaway was a perfect complement for Shaq, and then you got the 3 first-round picks to go with it. You take that deal all day if you're the Magic. And if you're the Warriors, who ended up getting Webber. But yeah, you take that deal all day. So anyway, back to Atlanta to close this out. I think the Hawks are kind of in a spot where if you get the right trade for Trae Young, do you do it? If I'm Atlanta, I probably do, to be honest, because Atlanta's also stuck in that mediocre kind of bubble with a few of these teams where they're not good enough to make the proper playoffs, but they're not bad enough to truly be where Utah and Washington currently are. That's kind of where Atlanta is right now. So today, the future of one of these teams is about to change, with a few ping pong balls going their way. And if they don't go their way, they're going to change for the worse. I.e. Sixers, we're looking at you. Flagg may not be the only game-changing talent here. Rutgers had 2 of them and still missed the NCAA tournament, in Dylan Harper and Ace Bradley. Could either of them become franchise game-changing type of talents? Or anyone else in this draft for that matter. Duke's got a bunch of names that are going to be involved here. Time will tell, but one thing is very much guaranteed here. Cooper will likely be able to plant his flag in a brand new city after tonight. As for me, I'm going to do NFL schedule videos for my next group of them. The Dolphins one will get a Tua train style video where I'll talk about how I think the schedule shook out, whether it's a good look for us, the tougher games, the cold weather games, the primetime games, all that good stuff. I'll cover that in the Tua trade. As for the schedule at large and the NFL season, the other 31 teams, I'm going to talk about them in this kind of format with games of interest and highlight 2 or 3 of them every week that I find very entertaining in a series of videos. So in that realm, we're going to go to a place that I know all too well. Lincoln Financial Field, Eagles Cowboys. You're going to be the first stop of my next train of thought.